It's time for the Money Puzzle Podcast. With good conversations and realistic solutions to the money puzzles we all face every day. I'm your host, financial advisor, chartered financial consultant, and president of Edgen Insurance and Financial, Robert Edgen. Now let's get this show started. Hi there, hello, and welcome to the Money Puzzle Podcast. I am Robert Edgen, and I'll be your guide for the ride for the next few minutes. Each week, we look at a different piece of the money puzzle and practical ways to solve it so you can have the financial confidence you deserve and the future that you dream of. Today, this is episode number 17, and we are talking about DIY financial planning versus DYI. Before you decide to DIY, to do it yourself, make sure that you take precautions so that you don't DYI or do yourself in instead. There are a lot of great things that you can and should do yourself for your own finances, but maybe not everything. So which things are okay to DIY and which should you get some help with so it doesn't become a DYI? That is what today's show is all about. But before we get into that hot topic for today, let's take a minute and say thank you to our today's sponsors. No, I'm just joking. We don't have sponsors for this show. We don't do this show to make money or to get paid. Just ask my wife. She'll tell you that's true. No, we do this show because we love talking about finances and solving people's money puzzles. It's a great way to give back. And honestly, I just love doing it. So no sponsors. What I meant to say was I thought we'd take a minute to look at some news. Today's article comes from Reuters, and the headline reads, Bar scales back free shot per goal promotion after U.S. 13-0 win. A Miami bar that offered customers free shots for every goal scored by the United States at the Women's World Cup has scaled back its offers in the wake of the team's record-breaking 13-0 thrashing of Thailand this week. The American Social Bar and Kitchen used its social media page for the promotion, clearly not expecting the U.S. to rack up the tournament's biggest ever win in their opening games. Now, the bar is a favorite meeting space for the local chapter of the U.S. soccer supporters group called the American Outlaws. But holy shots-a-moly, that had to be an expensive promotion for that bar. Now, being a former a dad of a former competitive soccer player, I can see why this offer might have made sense. I was at plenty of games where the final score was 1-0 or 3-1, but 13-0, I am sure they did not see that coming. But think about this. If they had just 100 people in that bar, they were on the hook for 1,300 shots, assuming anyone could still be drinking after the fifth or the sixth goal. But at $5 a shot, that's $6,500 worth of free shots that they gave away. That is a lot of free booze. Now, congrats to the USA women's team, by the way, for winning the World Cup. The bar did change their next promotion to the following game to one free shot per person if the women's team won their next game, which they did. I cannot really blame them for making that change. Now, if you'd like to read that full story, I've got the link in the show notes. But for now, let's go ahead and get to today's hot topic. All right, so you're getting serious about all of this money stuff, and you want to start getting your puzzle put together so you can be more financially confident and make sure that you have the future that you dream of. That is awesome. But if you are a do-it-yourselfer and like to listen to cool guys talk about money, but hey, you want to be the one who's making all of the actual moves and putting the pieces together, That's great. I love it when people want to get involved with their own finances and their own financial well-being. I love it when clients read financial articles or have a little pot of money that they do their own investing with, or do anything else that helps them be more confident about their money. But not everyone should try to DIY, and not everything should be done alone. Certain people don't have the right skill set or mindset when it comes to finances, and certain parts of your financial life might require some extra help. You know, when my wife and I were young and she was expecting our first child, Taylor, who's now 24 years old, we bought a crib, as all responsible parents do. When we got that crib home, I told my wife I would get it put together up in Taylor's room because I was the man of the house and that's what men do. Now, I had a few problems. First, as smart as I like to think that I am when it comes to most things, I am not that smart when it comes to taking a bunch of random pieces of hardware out of a box and turning it into something real like a crib. I didn't grow up building things. I never got into models or rockets. It just wasn't my thing. So in addition to not having the technical skills, the expertise or experience, I didn't have the desire to learn how or become good at building things. I actually hated taking the time to build things, so my heart wasn't in it. Now, what was the result? Well, I did get the crib put together. I think I turned an hour-long project into an all-day ordeal, but I did it. Then I brought my young wife up to the room. I showed her the crib, and she immediately noticed that I'd put it together wrong and it didn't work. It had a little release that you would push with your foot to lower the front of the crib so that you could take your baby out. Well, the way that I built it, the safety mechanism was stuck in the down position, and you had to use the release to try and get it up to keep your baby secure. In the end, my wife ended up taking the crib apart and putting it back together the right way. See, if you're going to be a do-it-yourselfer, you need to have the TED to do it. The time, the expertise or experience, and the desire to do it right, or you're going to mess it up. Now, I had the time. I committed an entire day to that crib. I definitely didn't have the expertise, but I could have learned, but I didn't because I didn't have the desire. If you don't have all three when it comes to your finances, you should enlist the help of someone who does. If you put your retirement puzzle together the same way that I put that crib together, the result could be not retiring when you want or how you want to. There is nothing wrong with not being good at everything and getting help in the areas where you don't have the TED to become good. That's probably why you don't fix your own car or fill your own cavities or do your own electrical repairs at your house. Or at least that's why I don't do any of those things for myself. If you're going to be a financial DIYer, make sure you've got the TED to do it. Now, if you do have the TED, that's great. But if you're going to be a DIYer, handling your finances also needs to feel more like a hobby than a job, something that you enjoy and want to spend time doing. If it feels like a job or extra work, something that you have to do even though you don't want to, you're not going to give it the attention that it needs to do the job right. You don't have to spend hours every day looking over investment options or reading Money Magazine, but it does help if you like to do those things and choose to spend some time every day or every week in those activities. The best do-it-yourselfers at anything watch TV shows about it. They read magazines about it. They listen to podcasts on the subject because they have a genuine interest. Finances and money are great things to be interested in, but make sure that you are interested in it before you take it on yourself. Now, the next thing to consider when it comes to DIY financial planning is, can you keep your emotions out of your decisions? People make the biggest financial mistakes when they panic and sell low in a bad market or get greedy and buy high in a good market. And who's going to stop you if you decide to take $10,000 out of your 401k to go to the Bahamas for the weekend? Or maybe not stop you, but at least make a face at you and ask you some questions like, is this really a good idea? Who's going to talk you through those impulsive decisions? You need to make sure that you can control those things in your emotions, or at least find someone who can act as a sounding board and give you some feedback on your financial plan and money decisions. One more thing to consider before you go DIY, and this is a sensitive subject, but are you as smart as you think you are? Now, I'm sure that you're a very smart person, but are you smart in the right ways? They say it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert at anything. Well, chances are you're an expert in your work, and you may be an expert in a hobby that you love and enjoy. You don't have to be an expert when it comes to your finances, but you do need to ask yourself if you've got the right skills to do it yourself and do it right so that you don't do yourself in. All right, so you've got the TED, the time, expertise, and desire. You're treating it like a hobby, something that you actually enjoy spending time doing, and you've got the right kind of smarts. So what parts of financial planning should you DIY, and which parts should you get help with? First, how about your investments? Now, investments are the focus for most do-it-yourselfers, and usually it's for two reasons. First, they like to be in control. They want to choose where every dollar is invested and going to go, and they like to have that kind of thrill of investing. Or number two, they don't want to pay the fees of having their money professionally managed. Now, there's nothing wrong with either, but back to being in control, it can be exhilarating watching your own investments and picking something that takes off and makes you a bunch of money. But it can be scary too if you pick something that turns out to be a loser and costs you a lot of money. You need to be able to evaluate what is and isn't a good investment choice for your specific situation. Just because it's right for someone else doesn't mean that it's right for you. You also need to be able to exercise some control over your emotions should you sell out, should you ride things out. If you're going to be a good DIYer, you need to be able to make those decisions from a financial perspective rather than an emotional one. So here's a few ideas that can help with that. First, if you want to try your hand at handling your own investments, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Start off by keeping a certain percentage of your portfolio or a dollar amount that you can invest how you want and see how you do. Now, I had a client, he was referred to me a few years ago, and he had always managed his own investments, but he was about to retire and he was starting to get a little anxious about handling all of those retirement funds. So we looked at some different options that would work for him and for what he was trying to accomplish. And we ended up splitting his money 50-50 into two buckets. Him keeping half to invest how he wants and us managing the other half for him. He wanted to try us out for 2 years and see how each half of his portfolio did. Now, after talking to the client, analyzing his risk levels and his goals, I recommended to him that at least half of his money be invested more conservatively than it was because he was invested too aggressively based on all of the things that we had learned about him. He agreed, and he tasked us with handling the more conservative investments so he could keep the other half and invest a little bit more aggressively, what he was used to and what he liked doing. 2 years later, we compared the results, and our half, the more conservative investments, were doing the things that we projected. They were right on track with where they thought they should be. And his half, 2 years later, even though it was more aggressive, was almost exactly where it was 2 years prior. When we talked about halfway through the 2 years for an update, he was actually killing it with his returns, and his half of the portfolio was way ahead of ours. But some market changes and some investment decisions that he made knocked him back down to even by the time that we got together for that 2-year review. If he had kept 100% of his money invested himself, he would have gone 2 years and made nothing, no growth on any of it. Now, I find that most people can get the investor thrill and stay engaged with their investments, even if they handle just 10% or 15 or maybe 25%. If you start there and do well and find that you like it, gradually take over on more and more. I love it when clients get involved and stay involved with their own financial success and keep some money to invest themselves. If you're working with an advisor who doesn't, just ask around. I promise no matter what area of the country you're in, I'm sure you'll be able to find one that feels the same way that I do. Another thing you may want to try and do yourself is your taxes. Now, while most financial advisors don't do taxes personally, taxes are a part of your financial plan. If you're using TurboTax at the end of the year to file your taxes, you're already a do-it-yourselfer. But as you get closer to retirement, this might be an area where you want to get some extra help for a few years. If you've got a big retirement distribution to deal with, or maybe a business you're selling off, or a rental property that you own, it's important to get your taxes right in retirement, because the more you have to pay in tax, the less you have left to support yourself in retirement. Now, there's a lot of tax changes that can take place when you transition from employed to retired. So it's always a great idea to meet with a CPA or a tax expert to help you with that transition. Then if you find yourself after a tax filing or two thinking you can handle it, fine, take it back on yourself, but get some help in that transition period. Then there's your retirement distributions, getting your money out of your different retirement plans, savings accounts, investments, all of that good stuff. Investing and saving for retirement is like climbing a mountain. You put money in and you save it and you invest over and over again throughout your working years until you get to the top of that mountain, which is when you retire. That's usually the highest point that you'll ever be at your finances, because you're about to start taking money back out instead of putting it in, and you're about to start that transition of heading down the mountain. Taking the money out on the way back down is just like climbing back down the mountain. Now, I'm not sure if you're very familiar with mountain climbing, but most accidents happen on the way down, not the way up. And I think the same is true with your money. If you make a bad choice or you fall a little bit on your way up, you typically have time to correct it. You can invest a little bit more or work a little bit extra to make it up. But when you're already retired, mistakes or falls can be a lot more costly. You don't have time to recover because you're not working and you're not still investing. When you're taking money out, you also need to pay attention to which order of investments you draw from first, or more practically, which combination of investments you should draw from first. That way you can make sure that your money lasts as long as possible and that you take your distributions out in the most tax efficient way. So even if you were great as a do-it-yourselfer on the front side of things, investing and saving and climbing that mountain, most people need some help on the distribution side because it's new to them. Think about it. You spent 20, 30, maybe even 40 years as a saver and an investor climbing that mountain. That requires a completely different set of skills and a different mindset than when you start taking money back out. So everyone should get some advice and some help as they're entering this stage of life to make sure that you're setting things up correctly and not risking that nest egg that you spent your whole life building. The same is true when it comes to passing money on to your heirs and leaving a legacy. You've never done that before because you've never died and passed money on before. Who do you want to get your money when you're done using it? The government, the nursing homes, your family? Making sure your family is taken care of in case you're not there to do it, and passing money on in a tax efficient way and making sure that your money does for your family what you want it to do. Even after you're gone, that is something that most people should get help with. So I would recommend that not be a do-it-yourself project. Here's the bottom line. It's great to be involved with your finances and money and play a part in your financial success. You should be involved. But there is a reason that even professionals hire other professionals. There's a reason that I use a CPA, even though I deal with taxes and I take tax classes. Sometimes you just don't know what you don't know, and working with an expert will make you more efficient. It will produce better results, and it will help you do better than you could do on your own. So think about your skill set and the time it requires to be a DIYer, and do it in a way that won't do yourself in when it comes to your long-term financial goals. Remember, your tax advisor, insurance advisor, financial advisor, investment advisor, they are all on your team and they are there to support you in you reaching your goals. So use them in that capacity if needed. And be realistic about what you really have the time, expertise, and desire to handle on your own. If you don't have the TED, don't try to do it. But remember, even if you do have the TED, even the best quarterbacks out there have a coach. Even experts work with other experts, someone who can see things from a different perspective and help you make the right call. So don't be afraid to get help when and where you need it, or at least get some coaching along the way. All right, that's it for today's hot topic. I hope that you found it helpful, and I hope that you'll come back next week when I'll have my business partner Brian back in the studio with me. We're going to be starting a month-long look at long-term care, including a couple of different interviews with clients who have been through it themselves with family members. We've got a lot of great information to go through, so I hope that you'll come back and join us. But in the meantime, please make sure that you share us with your friends or family. If you've got any value out of this episode, make sure that you pass it along to others that do. Also, give us a rating on whatever app you are listening to this podcast on. Give us some stars or some comments. We'd appreciate that. Check us out on our webpage. Join us on social media, on Facebook. All of those links are in our show notes directly below this video and audio. And if you've got a question about your own money puzzle, email it on over to questions@yourmoneypuzzle.com. That's it. Until next week, be safe, have a little bit of fun, and go out and do something to improve your money puzzle. You'll be glad you did, and we'll see you again real soon.
Registered representative of and securities offered through Securities Management and Research, Inc., SM&R. Member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through BFC Planning, Inc. Edgen Insurance and Financial Services, Johnson Financial Services, SM&R, American National Family of Companies, and BFC Planning are independent entities. There are risks involved with investing which may include market fluctuation and possible loss of principal value. Particular investments may not be suitable for certain situations. Carefully consider the risks and possible consequences involved prior to making an investment decision. Our firm does not provide legal or tax advice. Be sure to consult with your own legal and tax advisors before taking any action that may have tax implications.